coming up along the cervical spine through the transverse foramina are the two vertebral arteries, right and left. Okay, there's also vertebral veins in there. Here's a situation that doesn't happen often, and is that these two major veins actually, instead of branching, they fuse into this large brain along the brainstem. Large artery along the brainstem. Sorry, Monday morning, called the vertebral artery. All right, let's start all over again because I'm getting tongue-tied. Okay, vertebral arteries merge to this large artery along the pons called the basilar artery. Notice lots of branches come off of that artery, and then it feeds into this weird little circle thing at the base of the brain. See, we've got hypothalamus here, and we've got the optic chiasm, and this is known as an anastomosis. That's where vessels branch and interconnect with each other. We have numerous anastomoses all over the body, particularly in the heart and around joints and places like that. And this one is actually one that, forms in most humans, and this is how blood spreads out to the rest of the brain. So the vertebrals merge, they form the basilar, which branches into these two branches here. This is where the carotid arteries come in. So they would have been, they're cut right here, so they would have been coming up like this, okay, through the skull. And notice that branches come off of those two arteries, and it connects with the branches from basilar and forms this circle. It's also known as the cerebral arterial circle. There's posterior communicating and anterior communicating arteries, and then anterior cerebral. The carotids also form the middle cerebral arteries here, and then off of the basilar, inferior to the circle, is the posterior cerebral. So there's posterior cerebral, middle cerebral, anterior cerebral, and then they branch obviously profusely to bring blood to the brain, which then drains into the veins that we talked about, superior. You have a diagram in your book that shows you the that drainage. Question on that? That one, we do have basilar artery on some of the models, carotid arteries, not really a circle on a model. Okay, just to we want to review, well actually we want to view and review the circulation, the pulmonary circulation, okay? So recall, you guys did really good, you memorized the blood flow through the heart. So blood goes through the pulmonary trunk to the right and left pulmonary arteries. Then the branches occur based on the number of lobes in each lung. So in the left lung are 2 lobes, and in the right lung are 3 lobes. So the arteries will branch on the left side into 2, known as lobar arteries. And then the right lung will have 3 lobar arteries. They then continue to branch and branch and branch and branch until they get to the capillaries, and then they will merge and merge and merge until they drain into the pulmonary veins, which don't really follow a lobar pattern. So we just call them pulmonary veins. So that's pretty easy there. This is a really important special circulation that we have in the body. It's in your lab manual, called the hepatic portal circulation. What is hepatic? Liver. And did we learn about a portal system already once? Yeah, so that was at the pituitary, right? So in the abdomen, we have another portal system. Portal system again begins with a primary capillary bed, primary capillary bed. So primary is gonna be in the digestive organs. That means primary. That looks like the guy that's losing his head reaching out to the guts, doesn't it? Let me put some, then it looks like he's got broken hands. That's how you write primary, secondary. Okay, so the primary capillary bed is in the digestive organs, and that would include the stomach, pancreas, small and large intestines, and it also includes the spleen. Although the spleen is not a digestive organ, it is included in the hepatic portal system. So splenic veins, gastric veins, and intestinal veins, they're the mesenteric veins, will all drain into the large portal vein here, called the hepatic portal vein. So actually all of this here is hepatic portal vein, okay? That hepatic portal vein enters in the base of the liver, and then it will branch and branch and branch to form the secondary capillary bed. There we go, 2. Secondary capillary bed, and then they will merge together, finally forming hepatic veins, and the hepatic veins drain into inferior vena cava. So you have 2 separate large veins associated with the liver. So here's what's happening. A person gets their oxygenated blood from the various arteries that supply the digestive organs and the spleen. So we have splenic artery, the gastric arteries, mesenteric arteries, and all those arteries, with the exception of splenic, are going to come from the 3 large arteries on the anterior of the aorta, which would be the celiac trunk, superior and inferior mesenteric. So that's how they get their nutrients and their oxygen. So when we eat a meal and we have a high amount of nutrients, as the blood drains from the digestive organs and into the portal system is always deoxygenated blood, okay? Which is why these are colored blue. It's showing you that the blood that's draining into these veins has already delivered oxygen to these organs. So the blood that drains in there is always deoxygenated, but following a meal, it's going to be full of nutrients that our digestive tract has absorbed. What's another thing that's in your digestive organs that you don't want getting into general circulation? Bacteria, exactly, and could be other microbes or pathogens. So they travel through the portal system and they go into the liver, and the liver has the very leaky capillaries that we talked about in lecture class. The leakiest of all capillaries, they're called sinusoidal capillaries, and there are lots and lots and lots of macrophages that travel through the liver that gobble up and check and clean all the blood coming from the digestive tract. So you heard that the liver's a filtering organ. That's part of the filtering that it does. And then the hepatocytes, which are the liver cells, process all of the nutrients that come through here. We'll learn a lot more in detail about that when we study digestive tract. That's all you need to worry about right now. And then the blood is drained into the inferior vena cava, the hepatic veins. Now on the Vesselman model, there actually is no hepatic portal vein on any of the models. You can't see it on the models. On the Vesselman model, the veins that are attached to the liver, those are the hepatic veins that are draining the liver itself. And notice it's hepatic veins. Hepatic veins. So several veins drain the liver into the inferior vena cava. So the hepatic portal system is very significant because this is the way that blood gets to the liver for processing and filtering and stuff like that before it gets emptied back into general circulation. And then that's how the liver can also carry out all of its other metabolic jobs that it does in our bodies. It's a pretty awesome thing, actually, I think. But, you know, I'm an egghead, what can I say? Questions? There is a diagram of this in your lab manual, so make sure you understand that diagram. And then the main thing to know regarding fetal circulation. Fetal circulation. So this side is fetal, this side is adult, okay? Or actually just after birth. In utero, the atria are open to each other. The opening between them is called the foramen ovale. That's the indentation that you saw between the atria on the heart models, known as the fossa ovale. In utero, the infant obviously is in a watery environment, and it does not breathe air. It needs oxygen, but it's not breathing, right? It gets its oxygen and nutrients via the mother's blood through the placenta. This is a special organ that grows in the first trimester of pregnancy to support the infant, and it serves as an interface between the mother's blood and the baby's blood. And the connection is via umbilical veins and arteries. That's what's in the umbilical cord. Umbilical veins and arteries. There are other connections in the fetal heart, like the aorta and the pulmonary artery are connected to each other, and so the main thing I want you to know is the foramen ovale between the atria. And let's talk about the vessels, the umbilical vein and the umbilical artery. So recall that arteries are carrying blood away from the heart, while veins carry blood to the heart. We are going to talk about the umbilical vein and artery as related to the fetal heart. These different colors are like this because of different levels of oxygenation within the blood. So in the fetus, they labeled it way up there. Okay. All right, so here's the aorta, pumping blood away from the heart. Now it's sending the blood back to the placenta where it can be actually processed and everything through mom's blood. So it's a lower oxygenation here. And the blood that's going away from the fetus back to the placenta in the umbilical is going via umbilical arteries. So we got 1, 2 umbilical arteries carrying relatively deoxygenated blood. And then the blood returning to the fetal heart, fully oxygenated from the placenta, would be what? Umbilical what? Artery or vein?
Vein.
Vein, right. So the largest one in there is the umbilical vein. That's fresh blood returning, and it actually comes into the inferior vena cava and goes into the right atrium and then disperses throughout. So umbilical arteries are carrying the deoxygenated blood, while umbilical vein is carrying oxygenated blood. So that's the difference. That's the other situation where you have a vein carrying oxygenated and arteries carrying deoxygenated. Okay. Any questions? Somebody look in that book and see if there's a picture of this in there. You have a book in your, in the. Okay, so the rest of the time is yours.